Welcome to the first video and publish a novel with me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Hannah, and I am currently in the process of completely documenting my entire process from basically idea inception to publication day of creating a novel. This is kind of that first video where we're going to talk a little bit about idea creation and plotting. So kind of what I ended up coming up with for my idea. I like to focus on retelling. That's kind of the thing that I really love and enjoy. And that's something that you should pay attention as you're looking at ideas, is looking at what kind of stories you like to write versus what kind of stories you like to read, and see if you can find something in between. Like I said, I really enjoy retellings. So I decided for this project, I'm going to be doing Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. This idea came along when I used to have a folder on Pinterest with a bunch of, like writing tips and story ideas and all that. I think everyone has one these days. But there was one post, I'll have to see if I can find it because I think I've deleted it. Oh, shoot. Oh well. That talked about basically why are vampires always the super rich people and werewolves always the super poor people? Why can't it be switched? And I kind of liked the idea. I kind of laughed and I was like, that would be kind of a fun thing to play with. And then as I started coming up with ideas for specifically this project, when I sat down and said, okay, I want to document from beginning to end, writing and publishing a book, that idea kind of came to me and I was like, okay, so how can I take this poor vampire rich werewolf theme and incorporate it into a tale that I already know. So I started browsing through my bookshelf a little bit, and I tried looking at some just like classic fairy tales, and I didn't feel like I could make it work. And then my eyes fell on my giant William Shakespeare book. Like, it has the complete works of William Shakespeare in it. And I was like, I have never tried to retell a William Shakespeare play before. And I thought that would be interesting because one thing I really want to work on and improve is my plotting, is how to plot, so that I have kind of little mini goals to work towards as I'm writing, in hopes that will help kind of keep my writing more consistent. And I thought that this would be good because with plays, they're already kind of broken down into acts and scenes, which makes things a little bit easier. So I went ahead and I bought the No Fear Shakespeare, which, you guys, these books are great. Like, so if I open it up, we'll go here. You can see on this side is the original Shakespearean text, and this side is a more like modern English way of saying things. So they're great books, especially if you love Shakespeare but sometimes don't always catch all the jokes and stuff. Great books. So I went ahead, ordered this, read through it. I made some highlights and markings. By the time I hit halfway, I kind of dismissed the markings I was writing and just read. Which is why you're not getting a research video, because I am not a fantastic researcher. I kind of just read and go. But now that I've done that, I went ahead, after I read everything, was that I wrote down all the acts and the scenes and kind of what happens in each scene. So what we are going to do with this, now that we have, a plot to kind of work along, because I am doing a retelling, and this could help you guys who struggle with plotting, is that you can pick a book or a play that you know really well and break it down like this. I would suggest a play because it literally breaks it down into acts and scenes, so you can kind of almost start pulling it into a different plot. and then go ahead and look up different writing plot lines. So with Much Ado About Nothing, because it is a romance plot, it is primarily a romance with comedic elements, I went ahead and looked up a romance plot line. So I'll put in the link where I got this plot line. I have found out of the romance plot line, this is the one that makes the most sense to me, that I enjoy the most. I tried looking up comedic plot lines too, but I think because comedic is more of a descriptive word rather than like a strict genre, I couldn't really find anything on that. But I have found other plot lines, like I found like a gothic plot line, which is obviously like a subplot of horror and stuff. So you can find like very specific plot lines. But with this particular project, which I'm calling Barking Up the Wrong Tree, at least for now, I'm going to focus on strictly a romance plot with comedic elements, basically. So here, we're gonna kind of stack all these on top of each other. Okay, these should all be in order. And then we have our romance, right? So this paper will come into play later. Hopefully you guys can see that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell. Okay. So over here I have my Much Ado About Nothing plot. Over here I have my romance plot. Now, just kind of taking a quick look, you can see that my Much Ado About Nothing plot is much thicker than my romance plot. So obviously all these scenes will not correspond directly with this. We're just going to figure out what scenes do correspond with it. So going to the romance. Act 1 is the beginning. There's 3 acts for this particular romance plot. So Act 1 is the beginning. Scene 1 is the hook, which is around 1%, or as she put, 800 words in an 80,000 word manuscript, which is where we meet the protagonist. The first act in first scene of Much Ado About Nothing, obviously, after a battle, Don Pedro invites himself to Leonardo's house, and the relationships of all the main characters are established. So obviously these are kind of the same. These are the same story. If this is a romance story, this is kind of the hook scene. So that's pretty easy. So we're gonna kind of put these over here. Oh, and when I plot, this is how I plot, because I find that this is the easiest and it helps me kind of like move things around as I need to. You'll see, and I do this for all my stories because again, they're retellings. So I'll write down the retelling, the original tale's plot. I'll write down the kind of plot or plots that I want to include, because I do have one project I'm working right now that's a gothic romance. So I have a gothic plot and a romance plot. And I just kind of match up the scenes, and then afterwards, as you'll see, I'll write down what my actual scene is and kind of work from there. So I always put the story's plot first, then the genre plot, and then my plot. So, but right now we're just matching up genre plot with story plot. So there's that. So we get to the next scene, where it is the inciting incident is at about the 12% mark, or 9,500 words, where it's basically our couples meet cute, right? How they meet, which kind of ties in with scene 1, but I feel like it kind of works with scene 2 a little better. In the second scene, this is when Leonardo approves of Claudio and allows him to propose to Hero, who is the heroine. Don't you love that our heroine's name is Hero? So great. So those work together, so we'll go ahead and put those off to the side now. Okay, so now we get to an interesting spot where the scenes don't actually match up. So in this one, the first plot point is at about that 25% mark and is usually an event that kind of glues or puts our main characters together. However, in the play, this is where our antagonist, Don John, is introduced. And so where this is the case where these do not quite match up, I'll actually just skip this and push it off to the side. Then, okay, I think this should be, I'm gonna double check something because sometimes I didn't write exactly what was happening. So this is Act 2, which I believe is, I want to double check, but this should be the, yes, this is the masquerade. Okay, so in this scene, in Much Ado About Nothing, they basically hold a masquerade, and this is where kind of our couples kind of come together. The couples in the play, the main ones that are focused on are Hero and Claudio, and then Benedict and Beatrice, and these are kind of when those relationships really truly get established. They're making one-on-one interaction for the first time without other people around. And this is where we'll also set up the love line for our main couple, as I am telling this story from the view of a side character. So this is kind of our glue scene, basically that scene where those couples meet up and really like set together. So it's a really fun scene, by the way, so you guys. Okay. So again, we're running into a situation where our scenes do not match up. So at this point, we're in Act 2, the middle, and Scene 4, the first pinch point, which should be at about the 37% mark, and is a glimpse at the opposition, and often includes the first intimate moment. Where Act 2, Scene 2 is where Don John starts to plot ruining the wedding for, you know, reasons. Who knows what those reasons actually are. And this one actually, kind of looking, so this is actually kind of interesting, just kind of looking at things real fast, because it doesn't look like, this is the problem with having multiple love, romance plot lines. So this scene works mostly with the Benedict and Beatrice plot line. Just because Hero and Claudio are already like, oh my gosh, love at first sight, let's just love each other. And we do actually have a glimpse of opposition. So this one scene actually fits for all three of these, which it makes sense why he broke it down into 3 scenes, just because of the amount of work that would need to go through, because again, multiple plot love lines. So we can see here where there's a glimpse at the opposition through the antagonist plotting to ruin Claudio and Hero's wedding. But here we have there maybe they aren't so bad moments with Benedict and Beatrice because they're being tricked into loving each other. Yay! We love those plot lines. So, how am I going to do this? I'm actually this is how we're gonna do it. Okay, so we got our 3 scenes here, right? And basically I'm just writing ditto so that way I know these are all part of this first pinch point, right? So that is what we're going to do, so that way I know that this pinch point covers all 3 scenes. And I'm already. Okay, so my phone ran out of memory as I was filming, writing all the scenes out. So let me explain to you the process here while I lay out all the scenes and plots and everything. So what I do first, when it comes time to actually write the scenes, is that I lay out my plot or plots, kind of see, you know, how they line up, if they line up at all, where I kind of want them to sit. And once I got that, then I start from the beginning and kind of write my plot to the end. I usually don't have to skip scenes too much. I only skipped 1 scene because I knew there was a scene that I wanted in a certain spot, but I didn't know what I wanted. So I kind of skipped that until I finished everything. And then at the very end, I was like, oh, I know exactly what this scene is supposed to be, and wrote it in. And the nice thing about doing it on little like cards like this, whether it's note cards or whether it's just like a little like notepad thing that you work on, and separating it all like this, breaking it down like scene by scene and even breaking the scenes down, is that it gives you a lot of flexibility to move papers around and really get the story you want. So for example, with Barking Up the Wrong Tree, Much Ado About Nothing, because it's a play, is more, you could say that it's kind of third person omnipotent point of view. But Barking Up the Wrong Tree, it is more of a first person limited point of view, and is done from a side character. So that means that not all the scenes that are in Much Ado About Nothing I could use, or I'd have to use them differently and a little more creatively. So some things got shifted around so that I could accommodate for that, especially with the romance plot, because instead of focusing on the romance plot between Hero and Claudio and Benedict and Beatrice like it does in the play, I'm focusing on a relationship from the side characters that is slightly established but isn't established a whole lot, and that's the relationship of Ursula and Baracchio. So yeah, that's basically how it goes, is that I set out you can call them like inspiration plot lines first, where I'm taking inspiration from Much Ado About Nothing and a romance plot line. I kind of laid those out first and then moved those around as I started writing out the scenes for the actual plot. Okay, so I want to go over a little bit more in detail of how this, and shows you how my layout works. So if we look at the top row here, we can see that is the plot for Much Ado About Nothing, and it's literally like the act by scene plot. And in the next row, we have my romance plot line, which again, I will post that link down below in the doobly-doo for you guys. And then the bottom row, we have my actual scenes that I'm going to include in the book. So one thing I want to point out is that because, again, I'm doing this from the perspective of a side character, my first scene actually does not line up with the first scene of Much Ado About Nothing, but it does line up with, obviously, the first scene of a romance. So those are kind of shifted off to the left before the Much Ado About Nothing plot starts. But that first scene in Much Ado About Nothing matches up very well with the second scene that a romance plot needs. So that was able to go just bam, bam, bam. I have, my Much Ado About Nothing plot, the romance plot, and then my barking up the wrong tree plot, because they all work really well together. Now, the next two scenes are scenes that my character probably wouldn't actually be very involved in. And so I knew this was actually the scene that I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I wanted the scene. So I just put that little piece of square paper underneath it to note to me that, you know, I wanted a scene that would take place during that time, but didn't maybe necessarily tie in with it. And I did end up coming up with an idea of what I wanted, which was basically wedding or elopement planning with a rich family, which I'm kind of excited to write that scene. And then the last one is very similar to Act 1, Scene 1 of Much Ado About Nothing, where everything just kind of ties together, where, you know, we have the love lines that are really set up via a masquerade in the original play, which kind of ties along with the first plot point, where you typically have an event that kind of glues your characters together, that kind of pushes your characters together. And I'm like, do you know what? Let's just keep it. Let's just stick with the masquerade. Like, that's fun. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of how it gets laid out. So you can see that not everything always matches like up perfectly, but it does give you a nice flow where you don't feel like you're really lagging anywhere. So yeah, that is it. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully this gave you some ideas of how to plot. Obviously, because writing is a creative process, this process for me will probably change over the years. You can take this process and modify it for you. Maybe you find that you don't like it, you like Save the Cat, like great, whatever. But don't be afraid to try it out, see if it works for you. I hope you guys learned something new, and I will see you for the next video, which I think I'll do a video about building characters next, which will be nice for you guys because this is actually my strong point of writing. I feel like is character writing. Plotting is not. This is why I have this plotting system, is because it is my weakness. But yeah, okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoy your day, and I will see you at the end of February, okay? Bye!